welcome to the 12 o'clock news. With Sideshow and myself this week are both Harsha and Game with Storm. Welcome, guys. We're going to start off talking this week about Janus's hospitalization and what this means for the Apex tournament. Sideshow, do you want to get started on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much what it means for the Apex tournament as just like an interesting way to have a look at what's happening over in Apex as well. I mean, the fact that he was hospitalized didn't really mean that much. It's kind of interesting because pneumothorax, collapsed lung. It sounds really serious, but as long as they get to you reasonably quickly and you don't just sit there expending air out of your chest forever, then you're reasonably fine. So it seems like Janus is already home as well, and his team rewarded him with a lovely bronze medal for his troubles. But overall, Apex has been really good, so I just thought it'd be an interesting way of like having a bit of an open topic on discussing what you think of Apex at the moment. You got any strong opinions on it, Storm or Harsha?
Not really. It's stuff happens, I guess. There's really not much to talk about with it, to be honest. It's just, that's unfortunate, but it's pretty much over anyway, so can't do much.
I thought it was funny that Meta Athena, I think, replaced their tank player as well. I don't think anything was wrong with him. They just subbed in a new player. I think it was somebody for Alpha, or maybe it was Alpha subbing in.
Yeah, it was Alpha.
But essentially so it was like 5 starters versus 5 starters, which I thought was funny.
Just doing it to mirror. Give them a chance.
Yeah.
What do you think about the run that Meta Athena and Runaway have had, though? Because it's kind of insane that both of these two teams. I was just writing today the preview for this tournament's Super Week, which is like the promotion week for people to get between Challenger and Apex, and I'm like writing about these teams that were in the same position that Runaway was in last season, and now they're in the finals, possibly favorites to take the whole thing. It's kind of a crazy run, right?
Well, Runaway itself is a mega crazy story because, I don't know, this team just couldn't find their footing during the group stages, and then randomly made a roster swap, brought Runner back in, and then now are suddenly. Some people are saying they're the favorites. I don't think they're the favorites, even though they beat Lunatic High in the past. But they're in a position where they're definitely going to get top 2 in this tournament, which was really stacked. So I think that's pretty crazy.
Do you think it's reasonable to call them top 2 team in Korea? Or is this a bit of a miracle run? Would you say the same thing about Meta Athena as well? Because as soon as they run into a team that has a specific style, it was working well against the teams that play triple tank, but then they kind of crumbled against both of the Divey teams.
And that's the thing about the Apex format. I think that they haven't played enough series for me to confidently say that I think they're one of the best teams in Korea. Well, let's put it this way. I don't know if I could say they're a top 2 team in Korea. I do think that Runaway definitely is better than they were given credit for earlier, and they've obviously proven that by beating down top teams, and Meta Athena as well. I think what's really cool about them is they all have very unique styles, I'd say. Meta Athena, we've seen very, obviously the May boost and stuff like that. They're just a very creative team. And then we have Lunatic High, who's very, very well known for their dive. Runaway kind of plays around their, now Kaiser's a really strong tank. They've been playing around him a lot, and Stitch as well has emerged. So I think it's cool to see all these different styles emerge, basically.
Interesting. Well, let's talk a little bit about the Rivalcade Rumble that was recently announced. Joe, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, I think this is a big opportunity for a lot of teams outside of the invited teams to try to make a name for themselves in this $10,000 tournament. I think there's a lot of hatred towards Splice and Complexity getting invited. I'm sure you guys have some thoughts on that one, but I think. Personally, obviously, the other 6, Envy, Rogue, Cloud9, Selfless, Immortals, and LG Evil, all definitely deserve the invites. Splice and Complexity, while many think they don't really deserve the invites, I'm still okay with them being in it. I think people are overreacting big time, way too much, because you look at the next 8 teams, they don't even have to play each other in the invite itself, or the qualifier. And the next 8 teams are pretty much the only 8 teams, other than the 8 that were invited, that should be in a $10,000 tournament. So these other teams like LG Loyal, Liquid, etc., Denial especially, some of these teams that are really complaining about it, I think they're overreacting big time because they won't even have to play each other because they'll get the best 8 seeds. So I think there's a lot of hatred towards that, but in the grand scheme of things, I think teams will be okay with it in the end.
And that's the thing, right? I think that if this were like a 10-team tournament where there are just 2 qualifier spots or something like that, I think maybe then it would be a problem. But with 8 more like seeds up available, I don't think it's that big of a deal.
There is definitely a power 4 currently playing within North America, and EnVyUs and Cloud9 who've just come back from Korea that make this 6 at the top, who are currently within the top tier of North American teams, or teams currently playing within North America. And then it kind of gets arbitrary, I think, who you invite to the next 2 slots. Like, there is a big gap between LG Evil and Immortals and whoever else you decide to invite to the tournament. LG Evil have proven through the Carbon series and tournaments like that they have the consistency to be able to beat these tier 2 teams regularly. And they looked like they were going to be able to take the Carbon series until Immortals came back out of their slumber and were able to take it from them at the end. And I mean, who would you even like? Splice have actually, what did they do? They took a really small tournament recently. I think they beat like, what did they beat in the finals there? I can't even remember. But...
They won yesterday in a tournament as well.
Oh yeah,
it wasn't a big tournament by any means, but you look at these other teams like Liquid. Like Denial, and what have they done that Splice and Complexity haven't? I mean, you see Splice and Complexity in these tournaments, not that they're performing well, because they're not doing very well, but these other teams aren't doing well either. You don't see them in these other tier 2 tournaments like you sometimes see Splice in putting up big, results by any means, especially like, teams like Denial, who are probably hoping for an invite that, they win a couple of weekly tournaments. They're a good team, sure, but I don't think they necessarily like deserve an invite based upon winning a couple of weekly tournaments.
Is there anybody here that? Go on.
Okay, go ahead.
What do you have to say?
Well, I was just gonna say, Denial's kind of
shit.
Yeah, no, they're perpetually waiting for invites and never receiving them.
Well, they don't play anything really.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there anybody that actually misses out of this as well because of the way that it's structured? Like, is there anybody that would legitimately have a reason to complain? Like, are we talking about some team that's been really coming up recently that hasn't got an opportunity to come in, or somebody who is normally a big name but's been in a slump, like a FaZe or a Fnatic that really should be competing at that level, or is this just pointless?
I think. Oh, go ahead, man.
No, sorry. I was just gonna say, I think CLG and Rise Nation have been performing well, at least in Pit.
Oh yeah.
But like if that's Pit, that's just like 5 games so far. I don't know if that's not even that much. So I don't know. I don't think anybody else really has a claim to these 2 spots at least. What are you saying, Storm?
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I think Rise Nation, and the thing is, just because it's an invite tournament, that doesn't mean we're inviting the top 8 teams in North America. That doesn't mean that by any means. Because you see that with other tournaments as well. It's just because it's $10,000 tournament doesn't mean you pick the top 8. I mean, sometimes there are people that have people a little bit better. You get them in the tournament because they've played in your tournaments in the past. Teams like Splice has played in the Rivalcade stuff in the past as well. So that also helps their claim. But still, these teams like Rise Nation, Renegades, etc., they won't have an issue whatsoever qualifying, I don't think. And if they do, then they didn't deserve an invite.
Yeah.
Because
if they pull a Fnatic,
they'd be losing to teams such as Get Paid, Tempo Storm, etc. They might have to play one of those teams, but I don't think they're as good as them, or I think they're way better than them, I guess I should say here. So I don't think they'll have an issue at all.
And it does look like a really competitive tournament as well. I know you were saying that it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to invite the top 8 teams in North America, but it seems like they actually have invited the top 6, which we haven't seen in any tournament so far. Like the Pit tournaments have been super interesting, but especially for me, the European ones, because we haven't seen the Europeans play for so long. But the North American scene at the moment is actually, I think, as interesting or even sometimes more interesting than the European scene, just because you've got a lot of talent there. Selfless play this really cool style. Rogue are super aggressive, and it's like nice to see how the Europeans have come over to North America and how they're clashing together. So this tournament, I think, should be fantastic that we get EnVyUs and Cloud9 in the mix as well.
Mm-hmm. So this is actually the first time that EnVyUs has played online since the Overwatch Open qualifiers, which were back in
What?
Wow.
Maybe August, I think.
That's insane. So, I didn't realize that.
That's going to be really interesting to see how they do. I don't know. All right, so let's talk about that a little bit. KyKy confirmed as the EnVyUs coach. Is that some new, fresh news?
It is. That's some hot, spicy news.
Minutes ago, yeah.
He was he was supposed to be. When did he start coaching for them? He went over with Cloud9 before they'd organized their new roster at the beginning of Apex, and then it was announced that actually Gods was stepping into the roster, and KyKy instead was going over to coach EnVyUs as a trial coach. At the same time as I think Bishop was trying out stuff within Cloud9, or slightly earlier actually than Bishop's side, trying something in Cloud9.
So I think Bishop was around March and KyKy was around January. Maybe I'm wrong though. Or Bishop maybe late February, something like that. Yeah.
Here's my problem, is that EnVyUs looked like a team in Apex that had all the pieces necessary, genuinely, for all the like drama that people say about them not having a Genji player or like a true dedicated flex DPS player or a projectile player. They have the pieces to be able to make it work. There are teams in Apex who legitimately play triple tank plus a tracer or triple tank plus a soldier 76 or something, and they got much further than EnVyUs did and looked much better. They looked like a team that were lacking a coach, looking like they looked like they were the kind of team that lacked direction, preparation, being able to like allocate somebody to try and fulfill that role or draft in new players to their team or something. I felt like the coach was the biggest problem that they were having over at Apex, and yet apparently EnVyUs had one the whole time. I didn't even realize KyKy was doing anything the whole of Apex. Honestly, I thought that he just like trialed for a bit and then disappeared. And now you're telling me that he had a successful trial and is now with them. Obviously, I don't know what's going on with the team, but looking at it from the outside, this looks like a team that still doesn't know what it's doing in terms of like the wider picture. So it still baffles me that they've gone with him in this sense. What do you think he's adding to the team?
I mean, I can't say I disagree with you. Like maybe he can contribute strategically. I know he was always like one of the vocal members of Cloud9, and I think he shot called for them, or if they had like a shot caller or whatever. But I don't know. I can't see. I don't know if the team even sees him as an authoritative figure. Honestly, like they've known him as a friend because he was on kind of one of their rival teams, right? So I don't know. It doesn't really make sense to me. I know half of EnVyUs is like at his age or older, so like I don't know. This move just is strange to me as well.
I think. I mean, I see what you're saying there. I kind of, I kind of agree with the move in a sense, because I feel like there's not a lot of qualified coaches in Overwatch. It's not old enough, right? So all the coaches that I feel like are qualified should have been pro players by that time. And I guess retired in a sense, but you're probably not retired. You probably want to go back to it, but you're looking to, kind of, I don't know, expand your horizons, if you will. I feel like most coaches right now, I mean, they aren't even like as good of a coach as I think the players could be themselves. I think it's just an outside figure that's going to take a different perspective than to what the players see themselves. So, I mean, I even talked with some LG Evil guys back before when they were Hammers Esports about their own coaching situation, and that they were having troubles with it because they were struggling to find a coach that was, well, a coach that knew what they were doing and that was on the same level of play as them, which they were struggling to find because, they only trusted other pro players. And they were like, well, here's a couple pro players we would trust to actually be our coach right now, because it's difficult to find people, that have the same kind of analytical thought process as them for the coaching position itself. So I kind of see where they're coming from with it. Do I agree with it entirely? I don't know, but I guess we'll see how it works for them.
Yeah, perhaps I was a little harsh, when I was saying that I couldn't see any improvement. Like, I definitely agree. I'm not going to take it back. I definitely don't think that I've seen any improvement in the team. But the point you raised about them not seeing him as an authoritative figure and therefore him not being able to have an impact in the team, even if he was a really good, like, has a good potential to be a coach. I'm not denying that he's a smart player for sure. I think that he is. But I think also Internet Hulk is such a strong captain for that team, and such an older kind of, what do they call it in Korea? Is it the big brother figure or something? Yeah, it's like the bigger brother for the team, right? It's like the Ryu Jae-hong or the runner kind of figure for the team. He has always built this roster, and he's always had that kind of coach captain kind of outlook, it seems, that I can't really see them passing it off to somebody who isn't super in control or in some sense offers something different to them. So, yeah, I mean, I think KyKy probably could be a great coach, but I don't think he will or has been a great coach for EnVyUs so far. Like, nothing from how they've changed their play over the course of Apex has demonstrated that there's been any impact at all, even though I think he probably could do with a different team.
Well, maybe we'll see
I think
in Rivalcade.
Yeah, Rivalcade, they'll come out and they'll smash everybody with their triple Genji strategy or something.
Let's talk a little bit about TSM and what's been happening with them in Overwatch so far. Have they even announced a roster yet? What's happening?
no. So they haven't officially said anything. Like, I don't think so all they've said is that the complexity statement, which was like back in, I guess, August, I think, and then they gave that statement when PvP Live released a bunch of articles about potentially signing Kungarna back during like MLG Vegas. So basically, I wrote this kind of like, thinking back on it, I don't really know what the full motivation was. I just kind of wanted to tell everybody like, hey, this is what's going on. This is and I think part of
being a
like,
journalist, Harsha.
yeah.
What it is.
Well,
You're
I think part of
exposing
it
the
was
truth.
like, I don't know. This doesn't seem right to me. They're kind of like holding these two players, Blam and Connor J, obviously, like away from the competitive scene. I've heard that these two players, like from scrims, have just not even looked as impressive as they did in Kungarna because they've been out of the scene for so long. So I don't know. Part of my motivation, I think, was hopefully maybe TSM sees this and they're like, hey, like maybe we should actually, you know, put together this team instead of keeping these two guys like around for what, 3 months now, almost.
That's a long time in Overwatch.
Yeah, that's like almost a third of its life.
The only player that benefited from Kungarna splitting up rather than going to Ghost was Ajax, who accidentally tripped his way onto NRG after having been kicked from TSM. It was a bit of a farce because the team that was looking so promising then splits up. Half of them go to TSM, half of them go over or they were going to go to Ghost, and then they ended up being picked up by Splice. Splice have then not particularly performed. TSM haven't even formed a team. This was potential wasted.
And the other thing about this is, people always tell me like, yeah, TSM's really worried about their reputation and all. That's why they're breaking up these teams instead of signing like the full rosters and whatnot. But like, I don't know. I've just heard like everybody behind the scenes is just like refusing to scrim them because they just think they're bad and stuff like that. So like, I think they're harming their own reputation more by not signing a team, breaking these people apart, rather than just picking up a full team, even if they have questionable people like Baby Bay.
I think there are very real issues when you've got an organization that has certain sponsors. If you have like the potential to get a pushback from former cheaters, that's like a really bad thing for sponsors. I know that there are certain orgs within the community who will not look at cheaters from former games, etc. And there are a lot of people, to be honest, who've cheated in former games. It doesn't mean they're cheating now, but they get smeared with a bad rep, and then it reflects badly on the sponsors, so they don't want to pick them up. I think that's all fine, you know, but you gotta not pick them up and then drop them afterwards or something.
There has to be like a cutoff point, I think. I don't know.
Well, let's talk a little bit now about the World Cup announcement. So just after our episode was released last week, there was an announcement that there would be a World Cup that would go... They were going to do qualifiers in 3 different regions, or group stages in 3 different regions, North America, Europe, and Asia, correct? And they're talking about that culminating at BlizzCon in November. Now, what's interesting to me about this is that BlizzCon obviously that's right at the end of the year, essentially, because after that you have the holidays where you can't do anything. And they haven't announced when the group stages are going to be yet, but we're now in April, and we were supposed to have information about the Overwatch League coming out in Q3. Presumably whatever's happening with the World Cup is going to have to take place in Q3. So I'm getting a very strong suspicion that what we're getting is kind of a cop-out, like, hey, we're going to give you this World Cup again, and just pretend that we never promised you Overwatch League was going to be in 2017. Because I can't fathom them doing both. I honestly, the way that it's looking right now with Blizzard Esports, I cannot fathom a world where they can both pull off the league that they promised us and simultaneously do a World Cup on the scale that they're talking about doing. Especially when they're out there asking people on Twitter, like, hey, help us come up with ideas on how to do this.
Well, I imagine it's going to be like, they're going to have like a 2-week break or something like that during the season, kind of like an all-star break during, like the NBA and, well, I guess mostly the NBA, because I know the NFL does their all-star stuff after the season ends. Mm-hmm. But like, I imagine that's probably what it's going to be, and it's not going to be like very well practiced teams or anything. I think they're just going to get like a week of practice leading up to the event. Although I don't really, because you did bring up the qualifier thing. I don't really know how the qualifier stuff is going to fit into all of this.
Yeah.
I imagine it'd have to be before the Overwatch League is actually starting.
I mean, well, here's the thing. Again, it's April. Like, if you're going to do this, you're pretty much going to have to start now. Like, these group stages are going to have to be in enough of advance of the World Cup itself in order to get, travel and everything worked out for all these players to come out from whatever country they're coming from. And those papers take a long time to get these days. We've seen what Numlocked was waiting for months to get his paperwork to come out to the US just to play. And I understand that with esports right now, it's just tricky for people to get their visas to come out, even just for small tournaments, because there's money involved and stuff like that. But for me, I'm just wondering how they're going to get, like, first of all, find out what teams are qualified, get those teams put together, get those teams practice, get those teams through group stages in their region. Like, that sounds like offline tournaments is what it sounded like, was what the plan was. So how are you going to get all of that done in such a short period of time? Like, that alone to me is really impressive that they're talking about being able to pull this off by November 4th. But on top of that, you're going to have this huge league that's going to be changing the face of esports, and everybody's going to be, buying out teams and stuff like that. I can't, in my darkest part of my brain, fathom that they could do both of these things simultaneously this year. Like, when we're already in the second quarter of the year.
Yeah, let's be clear. They have said that it's going to be live qualifier group stage matches, as in they say, quote, "You don't need to make it to California to catch Overwatch World Cup matches. Instead, a series of 4 live group stage events are slated to take place this summer across Europe, North America, and Asia, featuring the top 32 countries," end quote. So there are going to be, in some sense, like LAN group stage events happening around the world at some point. And the tickets go on sale in May. So presumably, I mean, this could still start all before, like the qualifier stage could all wrap up before the Overwatch League starts, and then it could be a break in the middle. It's going to be a lot of work, like I said, but Blizzard are a big company. I mean, if this was their plan, and this isn't just something they're throwing in, as you said, as a bit of a cop-out, then not only will it be awesome because it'll be, like Harsha said, like a break in the middle where you get something fresh and you get to see them all competing like all-star teams or whatever, and it gets that nationalism vibe, and it also pulls in those people who are only interested in the national bits to then follow the guys afterwards when they're competing in the Overwatch League. Like, it would be an awesome idea. It comes down to how well they pull it off. But
I mean, in theory, it would be great to have something that's competitive and not a glorified Strawpoll, and actually have, teams qualify based on skill. That's fantastic. I mean, in theory, it all sounds like an awesome tournament. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm excited about it, and if they're committing to it this late in the game, then I know it's going to happen. Because last Overwatch World Cup was kind of a surprise that came, last minute as well. And in their other games, they do like road to BlizzCon and stuff like that. So this is kind of, I guess, their bigger road to BlizzCon. It's just, for me, like, I'm really struggling with reconciling a lack of information on the Overwatch League with a last minute kind of it feels very last minute, this World Cup, to me personally. It frightens me, and I know they have a huge group of people working on Overwatch, but it's still, with zero information coming out about the league, it's a little terrifying. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I see both sides of the story, but I have faith in Blizzard just seeing what they've been able to do, most specifically with StarCraft, with where that game has actually went over the past couple of years, and still, bringing in over 100,000 viewers and still keeping the game alive in the esports scene. Moving over to Overwatch, I think it's a lot to handle, but like Sideshow said, they're a big company, and I expect them to be able to pull this off. How well it's going to be pulled off, I don't really know. Obviously, we can't really gauge that right now, but I like the idea of having kind of like an all-star thing like we see in like League of Legends as well, that comes through during the break with the mid-season invitational and whatnot. So I kind of see that mixing in pretty well with it. I like where this is headed. I have faith in Blizzard, though. I'm sure they can pull this off.
They also said as well, they had previously announced that the Like people were saying, oh, the Owl final is going to be held at BlizzCon each year. Then is that going to be a thing? And I believe was it Nate Nanza said in an interview quite a while back now that that wasn't going to happen and it was going to be separate. So perhaps their plan for something recurring is to have something more like an All-Star event, something more like a World Cup that would happen every year. And to pin into your concern about it being a lot for this company, I agree that based on what we've currently had for Overwatch, this seems like a huge amount. But the way that they've set their expectations for Overwatch as like this esport that's going to be competing in the tier 1, this is how much it's going to be worth, this is how much we reckon it's going to make, etc. They're going to have to blow the shit out of all of this. They're just going to have to blow like the top off. They're going to have to produce stuff that's way bigger than anything we've currently had in the Overwatch scene. So this would be on par, I think, with what we would expect from the Overwatch League. And I think to have your expectations lower seems reasonable given what we've seen so far. But I have in my head that this is just like the preseason, where you look back like 3 years earlier and you're like, we're just milling around, like waiting for stuff to happen in this period of time. And it was just like a free-for-all, just like the Wild West was this period of time that we're currently in.
Oh, no, and I know that we're all going to look back on this and it's going to be hilarious that we're all just grasping for information. Because it's, I think Thorne was saying too, if anyone knew anything, everyone would know about it at this point. And the fact that it's getting so late in the game is just starting to make me, personally, it makes me very nervous. That like when you're looking at organizing something that large on top of something else that large, it gets a little scary. So I mean, I'm not saying that I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying I hope they do both, and I hope that both of them are done to the best of their abilities. It's just, it feels like with the amount of hype that's been built around Overwatch League, that's where they would put all of their resources, right? Like that's supposed to happen before the World Cup. So wouldn't we be getting information about this before, if it's bigger and more involved and has a larger impact on the scene? I would imagine that we'd be getting more information about that now so that people can prepare, they can start building around it, as opposed to announcing
and instead they'll be building national teams.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. And that's really, really rough. I mean, these teams already are playing in everything they can get their hands on, but they're scrimming all the time, and it's good. It's healthy to have that kind of community where teams are actually spending the time practicing, and we actually have sponsorship to enable them to play as much as they do. But God, could you imagine like trying to play a full season in the middle of that, like, and doing the World Cup at the same time, if these things are going to be on top of each other?
Yeah, it'd be intense.
To be able to offer enough content for both. Yeah, that worries me about the league as well, the way that they've discussed traveling at the league. That's a lot of traveling, even if it's just around the US. That's a lot of sitting on planes. I don't know. It makes me nervous.
Be interesting to see as well, like if you think of this as a marketing strategy for the Overwatch League as well, because they knew that the Overwatch World Cup last year was a big success with a lot of their more casual fans, right? So I think it works from a marketing point of view as well, where they think this will draw in some of the casual fans and inject them into like being Owl viewers as well, like in some way invested in the scene and wanting to tap into the esports side of it as well, because it'll be happening at the same time, or it'll be using some of the players. But how do you guys feel about that? Because when I first heard about the Overwatch World Cup last year, I had reservations about it based on the fact that they are essentially putting a lot of their resources into promoting national teams that you then never see again. And some of those players as well aren't in the top teams, won't be in Overwatch League, will be competing in completely different regions, etc. Do you feel like it actually fills its role in terms of marketing or dragging in fans from different places?
So last year, this kind of got announced before we knew anything about the Overwatch League. So I think that's kind of important, because at that time I was pretty disappointed in Blizzard, because I thought this was kind of a chance for them to legitimize the esports scene in a sense by like showcasing the top teams playing. And this is BlizzCon, right? So this is where all the people that don't actually watch Overwatch esports consistently can go watch them and maybe be introduced to the scene. But after I saw the event, like I thought it was pretty enjoyable, and because they announced the Overwatch League thing, I think it made more sense to me. So I don't I kind of actually like the format, because it's kind of a break from the regular esports content. But I don't know. We do definitely need an actual, Overwatch League for this to be like kind of acceptable, I guess.
Yeah, I gotta kind of agree with you on that one. I think it's a little bit of a refresher from kind of the top teams we see today continuing to play each other, and that's pretty much some people think that the scene can get a little stale with seeing the exact same teams play each other time after time. You keep seeing LG Evil playing against Immortals; it's always the same result or something like that. I think it is a little bit of a refresher. While I'm not the biggest fan of oh, he's my favorite streamer, so I hope he goes. I would like to see the best from each country be on a team together rather than the top streamers from a country on a team together. I think they can do something to maybe avoid that. I don't know exactly what you should do, to avoid that situation, but I feel like that would make it a little bit more competitive and a little bit different, I think, compared to this past year.
So that's actually the thing about this year. What they're doing is they're going to have, I believe later this month, they're going to be announcing like nominees for kind of team builders. So it's going to be like people from the community that are going to be building these teams out of like the professional players. Or I don't know if it's the professional players. It's going to be like top end ladder players plus pros and maybe I guess streamers. But I assume the teams will be more competitive this year than they were last year.
And then they're choosing the countries based off of statistics gathered of the top 100 in each region. Yeah. So that sounds a lot more reasonable, a lot more competitive, because it is a little bit scary when you start looking at some of the skill differentials in different regions. But then you think about it too. Like we've got players that are in the U.S. that are from like we've got Rogue. We've got Rogue living in Las Vegas. If they
I'm not sure how that works.
Are they going to get picked for the U.S. team, or are they going to get picked for the French team?
I imagine
it would only make sense if they get picked for the French team. If they get picked for the bloody US team, I'm gonna have a face.
Satch's gonna have an aneurysm.
I'm gonna actually have an aneurysm if the genuine US team in the World Cup is all French. If it was just Rogue, I'd flip.
I'd like to
Who would the French people have? They'd have Gamers Origin or something instead. But I definitely think the adaptations they've made this year are good. Like identifying the top 32 countries from the average rank of the top 100 is generally a good way to go. I know a lot of the players from Iceland were complaining because they do actually have like 10 pretty good players that would be able to compete on the world stage, but they the rest of their top 100 is they don't have that many people in the country itself, so it's kind of skewed downwards quite a bit. But the idea about having what do they phrase it? A national committee, they phrase it as.
That's what it was.
Consisted of 3 local experts who will be charged with recommending roster picks for all stages of the competition. So it kind of sounds like you'll be recommending different rosters or possibly like a larger roster that you can then pick from as well, because it definitely says roster picks for all stages of the competition, including the BlizzCon finals, as if you could change the lineup.
That kind of confused me a bit. Maybe they build like a bigger team, kind of like what people were imagining the Overwatch League model would be, where you have like substitutes and stuff.
However, the problem could get even worse, right? Because you know the issue with politics where if you've got like direct like a referendum or something where you're literally voting on players or something, it can get fucked up because the average player is pretty stupid, like the average person is pretty stupid. But if you deliberately elect someone who is stupid, you're guaranteed to screw it, right?
So you're running then, is what you're saying?
Well,
I'm going to be
sideshow for Europe.
What I'm saying is, if the way the selection process works is that like Blizzard picks 10 people from each country that you can then vote on, that anyone can then vote on who gets picked. Now, if that works how it worked last year, that means that it's probably going to be 3 very popular streamers who are then the team coach, who don't know really how to build a roster. Although it does say, including analysts, coaches, statisticians, and other authorities in the esports community, no one's going to vote for Harsha over, like, I don't even know, like Moon.
Yeah.
So, I vote Moon, I gotta be honest. I don't think you're talking about Harsha.
But then a lot of the problems are going to be even worse because you won't actually have the best teams because the people picking the roster don't really know what they're doing as well. So it's got the potential to be, it has some of the same slips, but in general, I think it'll work fairly well.
It'll be entertaining to watch too. I don't doubt that it will be the spectacle that we've grown to expect from BlizzCon. And tickets are going on sale this week, so I'll be mashing my refresh button like everybody else. It's really interesting timing because they announced this like a week before tickets went on sale for BlizzCon, and they're already impossible tickets to get. Just without having, Overwatch involved, they were difficult to get to begin with. So, I mean, the sales are extremely limited, and they have something like
different.
5 times the number of people trying to get tickets for it.
These are different tickets?
No, BlizzCon tickets, just to go see the World Cup. Yeah, it's
Gotcha.
Those tickets are going on sale, I think, tomorrow. So it makes sense they announced it, right before tickets went on sale, now that I think about it. Very interesting.
Do you know what a brilliant way, did you see this news recently that Blizzard had won a lawsuit against the company that was making cheats? Yeah? No, they arrested some people who were making cheats in Korea, but they won a lawsuit against, I believe, a German company that was making cheats, right? So the law is only draconian in Korea and says if you cheat in a game or something, you literally get put in jail or something, which is the maddest shit I've ever heard. If that was happening... It's absolutely mental. I like games as much as the next person, but you should not go to jail for making or distributing cheats for them. But the best way that this company, who's just been done for some $1 million, like 13 million or something, all you have to do is set up your bot army to go and just buy all the tickets for BlizzCon, and then just leave all the seats empty, and just do that for a couple of years. That's how you get back at them. You just leave the place entirely empty, and then when they have the crowd cam that pans around everyone, it's just nobody there except for this one guy, this one CEO is just sat there just loving it.
That is unbelievable.
Tickets are $300 also.
Yeah.
I mean, they just lost that much in lawsuit. I'm sure they can just, they didn't even turn up to the trial. They just thought, no point. We're making so much money from this cheat. We can afford to just throw away whatever it was, 4 million, 10 million. I can't even remember.
That's hilarious. All right. Well, I think that's it for this week. Thank you, Game with Storm and Harsha, as always. We'll see you guys next week.